Healing Powers TV. I'm your host, Laura Powers, and I'm so pleased to have Foster Gamble on the show. He is the host and creator of Thrive, the film, or the movie. And I wanted to ask him here to talk about the film, the message behind it, and also what inspired you to make this film.
Well, I guess really what inspired me was just the contrast between what I saw as the incredible creative potential and potential to love and thrive of human beings, and then what's actually going on the planet. It just made no sense to me going through college and coming out into the world. I came to the conclusion that the so-called adults in charge apparently don't know what they're doing, or at least they don't have most of our best interests in mind. So I really committed myself to trying to figure out what's in the way of our thriving, and if I found that, then what can we do about it? And I told my friends, I was a filmmaker at the time, I said, I'm not going to go be making feature films because I don't have anything important enough to say, but if I find the answer to what's in the way of our thriving and what we can do about it, then I'll make a film. Well, it took 50 years, but here we are.
There you go. Sometimes the journey is long. So I think this is interesting. That Thrive, is a great title for the movie, but it covers a lot of topics. Can you share with our audience, in case they haven't seen it, kind of the theory or overarching idea behind the film?
Really, it's intended to be very comprehensive. We really felt, my wife Kimberly, who is the producer and director of the movie, and also appears in the movie, we really felt that it was our calling, our mission, to try to connect enough of the dots that people could get a coherent picture of what's actually going on behind the scenes, economically, in terms of health, in terms of food and so forth, that is actually intentionally, it turns out, getting in the way of our thriving. And then in the realization of that, we followed the money upstream and found out that the same people were basically in charge of every major sector of human endeavor. And once we found that, it was like, okay, well, that's a little scary.
Right.
So what is their agenda? Well, that was even scarier, because it turns out that in a sense, the good and bad news is that so many of the problems we have in the world are actually intentional on the part of a small group of people who are trying to control other people's lives. And that the good news part of that is that I wasn't wrong about the basic goodness of humanity. And it's actually a very small number of people who are having such a destructive agenda. So as we find out what that is, and I calculate we outnumber those people by 1,000,000 to 1, then we can actually turn it around. So a lot of the movie, really the last half of the movie, is about grounded, practical solutions that you and I can participate in our daily lives that don't take a lot of time and money.
I think that's so important because it's so easy to point out a problem and say, oh, there's this crisis. But everyone needs something that they can do. And the truth is we all can have a great impact. And I think that most people don't realize it's always the minority that makes the greatest change. So even if we change small things, we can have an impact on these big issues that you address in the film.
And one interesting aspect is that the core, it turns out, of the solutions is what we call the fundamental pattern, the torus, T-O-R-U-S.
Okay.
It's basically a donut-shaped spiral vortex that is the only pattern that sustains itself in a continuous medium, as far as we know, anywhere in the universe. So given that that's what the entire universe does to sustain a healthy system, it would be good to know that, because our systems aren't very sustainable. So in terms of the kind of subject matter of your show, with focusing on health and empowerment and so forth, as people come to realize that they are themselves a toroidal energy field, and we've been getting lots of letters from healers all over the world saying thank you for showing a visual representation of what I have been using in my own meditation and then teaching my students and using for healing people, because it's that pattern of wholeness, whether it's economics or health or agriculture, education, whatever. That really is the key, is how do we approach whatever it is to nurture whole systems.
Right. Yeah, it's great because I also am an energy worker, and so it's wonderful to see, we talk about it, and I think the healing community and the metaphysical community is like earth energy and cosmic energy or something, but that's exactly what you're talking about, this spinning kind of vortex. And I was really amazed to learn in your movie that this has been there's many scientists who've tried to tap into this to provide a clean source of energy, and that their efforts have been waylaid, that they've been shut down.
Yeah, you talk about healing. Imagine what it would be like if we had all around the planet these devices that are off the grid, take virtually nothing to run them. In most cases, once you get them going, they run themselves, and would provide basically safe, clean, abundant energy to people anywhere on the planet. So once again, that's a model of how once we recognize the wholeness and dance with it, instead of crashing things together and trying to
Right.
control the explosion, we can end up with a thriving world.
Can you talk a little bit about something you discuss in the movie of the two methods that we used to gain power? One was just destructive, and one is which is creative. That is discussed.
You mean in terms of like the free energy?
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
that was like mind-blowing for me when I heard that idea.
Well, it's really the feminine energy coming into the whole field of energy access, because we've been basically doing it in such a macho fashion of burning things and exploding things and fusing things and so forth. And look where it's gotten to. I mean, we've made a lot of progress, but we're also threatening life as we
Right.
know it on the planet. So with the so-called free energy inventors that I've had the privilege to visit, every single one of their devices accesses in one way or another this rotating toroidal form. But instead of crushing it, it actually honors it and dances with it. And when you dance with it and go into resonance at certain octave frequencies, if you've got the materials and the geometry and so forth right, it just starts pouring out clean energy.
That's amazing. I love too, one of the things that you discuss in your movie is how all of these seemingly disconnected things are so connected. And we live in a society where it's like, well, let's analyze just this one thing,
Right.
and then this other thing, and those are totally separate. And the truth is, everything is so interconnected. So you can't separate health from war, from our food.
Yeah, we're starting to show Thrive at a number of universities, and one of the things that I like to just remind the students of, which I wish I had known at the time, is that what we call physics and chemistry and biology and so forth is simply the description of the toroidal dynamic at different scales. So at the
Yeah.
smallest scale, you've got subatomic physics,
Yeah.
and then you come up to chemistry. And then that forms into biology, and then that forms into psychology, and you get into astronomy and astrophysics and so forth. But it's really all one continuous medium that's useful to name, but it's also really useful to remember that we named it, it's not actually separate.
Right. Well, this has been wonderful. Is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience that we haven't discussed so far?
Well, first, just thanks for the opportunity to have the conversation. I love talking in independent media formats like that.
Thank
because
you.
then you don't have to be suppressed by any advertisers' agendas
Yeah.
or any corporations' agendas or any government's agendas. And I encourage people, if you're interested in what we've been talking about, to check out the movie Thrive. You can either buy a DVD at thrivemovement.com, or you can watch it for free on the internet at that same site. We just released it for free worldwide,
Wow,
and
that's great.
now I think it's coming up on 19 different languages. So watch it, and if you enjoy it, share it with your friends, because it saves you a lot of time in figuring out what's really going on, so that we can figure out what to do to actually transform the world into a planet that's thriving.
That's wonderful. I think that's great that you're making it so accessible
Thank
for people, because I know I went to a private screening, which was great, but for people to be able to watch it in their own home is really wonderful. Well, thank you for being on the show, and thank you for what you do, because I think getting the message about this is so important, and also that people at home do truly have the power to make a difference. Like, this is not a hopeless situation, but you first have to know what the problem is in order to fix it, and I think this is a big step for people making these connections with what's really
Yeah,
happening.
in fact, Kimberly and I are here in Colorado just for that reason. We're sharing
Yeah.
a toroidal solutions model that allows communities to work on multiple issues but stay in communication as
Yeah.
one whole system in a way that empowers the individuals and also hooks communities together in a way that I think is going to be unstoppable.
Wow. Well, thank you again. Thank you for your work, and thank you for talking with me today.
Pleasure.
For those who are watching, you can find out more about Healing Powers TV at www.healingpowers.net. Thanks for watching.